Hello, my name is Holly Shippers. I am the seasonal manager here at Sunnyside Nursery, and to my left is...
I'm Sarah Christopherson. I'm the plant designer here, and I also work in the seasonal department.
Today's topic is going to be talking about how to grow cool veggies, and where to grow them, and how to be successful with them. First, you want to pick your site. Are you going to put your veggie patch in the ground? Are you going to create a nice, good-sized raised bed, or are you going to put them in, say, 15-gallon containers? I myself do the containers. It works very well, but it'll be a different way of doing it than in the ground or raised bed. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
I've done a lot of container gardening myself, but I, at this point, have been growing my veggies in long raised beds.
So when you're deciding on where to grow your veggies, kind of keep an idea of where the light is. Just remember, cool weather veggies like that. They like to be cool, so they're not necessarily going to be happy in a hot afternoon situation. So let's start talking about some other products.
Well, we can talk about the sun a little bit.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Sarah has something to talk about. That's really cool.
Well, and I'm not going to mention specific apps, but if you're a little techie, you have your smartphone, I'm a little techie. There are a lot of apps you can find out there that will show you your sun position. So if you're at a new location gardening, or maybe you're new to gardening and haven't really thought about the path of the sun and what parts of your property get more or less sun, or sun at certain times of the day, there are sun position apps, and that's how I searched for it, was sun position. That then when you take your phone and you put it up into the sky from where you're thinking about planting, it'll show you the position of the sun. You can see at certain times of the day if it's going behind a tree or a building, or if you have blazing hot sun the whole time, or maybe you have your directions mixed up and you're looking the wrong direction, you don't get any sun from that area. All good things to go to know to pick what plants are going to go in what areas of your yard.
And it'll show the progression of the sun ahead of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It'll show you where the sun is at the time and where it is each hour, so you can kind of see the arc of the sun.
And it doesn't matter if there's a tree in the way or anything.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And like she said, they don't. A lot of these cool season veggies don't want blazing hot afternoon sun. It is getting less blazing hot, especially here in the Pacific Northwest.
But we can still have some hot days in sun.
Yeah, and there are some that prefer even less sun than others.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that when we get to the specific plants.
Yeah. If you decided to do your veggies in the ground or in a raised bed, you'll probably need to add some soil to add nutrients as well as other products. I would suggest for the ground and raised beds the compost or the soil booster, and that's exactly what they're there for. They're going to boost up the nutrients in that soil. You also then would want to add azomite. Azomite are trace minerals that help your plants reserve and store nutrients, and it also helps enhance all your edibles. I use everything I consume, my veggies, my fruits, my herbs, anything that you're going to consume.
It's amazing, the difference. It's so good.
You also, for raised bed and ground, would want to add some organic dolomite lime, agricultural lime. This has your calcium and your magnesium in it.
It's also going to raise the pH a little bit with your veggies. They like slightly acidic to neutral, and we tend to be fairly acidic here.
And you also want to add a good organic fertilizer. We have a really nice tomato veggie fertilizer through EB Stone. Now, if you've chosen to go the container route, which is what I said earlier, what I do, I personally like the 420 soil. It's also known as Ultimate. It has added a mycorrhizae, which are beneficial mycofungi and roots, rhizae roots, that will help create strong roots that will draw up all the nutrients and the water needed for that plant. And it also has beneficial bacteria, very important. You can also use the EB Stone, Edna's Best potting soil. And along with those, you would want, again, the azomite. Now, you would not want to use the dolomite lime because in a small container, such as a 15-gallon, it's so easy to over-lime, and you can over-lime. And then that will make the plant not able to bring up water or nutrients It'll turn yellow and you won't be happy. So to replace that, you would want at least to get that calcium in there. Calcium is to help create good, strong plant cells. Very important, as well as adding the fertilizer.
Now, when you're working in a raised bed or in the ground, in a raised bed, you're generally adding something like the EB Stone raised bed mix. We don't have an example here, but it is something that we always carry. I use that in my raised beds. That's what I started out with, and added my amendments for the veggies. But you do have your plants growing in there, especially if you're not mulching regularly. You have the sun baking some things out of the soil. The water is taking a lot of nutrition out of the soil, so you're going to want to replenish. That's when things like the planting compost and the soil booster make good top dresses. Putting a couple inches down for every new season's planting. You're going to have your worms and your critters all eating this and working it into your soil. If you're starting out with just your native soil, and maybe it's not the best quality, some people are dealing with more clay soil, sandy soil, what have you, or maybe just things that are poor nutrition, have maybe been sitting for years just bare, which can really deteriorate the soil. Then you'll probably want to rototill or use a shovel to dig these things in and incorporate them. But if after you have an established bed and you're just wanting to add things back, you can top dress, use these as a mulch on top, and they're going to work their way in with the watering and with the critters and everything.
And I do like to use a compost as a top dressing this time of year, average usually in the fall. That kind of starts to break down. It kind of helps you along with your next spring's crop. You'll be tilling that in as you plant.
You're going to be breaking down and feeding your soil, which in turn feeds your plants.
Now, a lot of people want to put manure in. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just going to add extra nutrients, which is always a good thing. There's steer manure and chicken manure. I would not recommend using anything fish for your edibles, because that will help in your food not tasting very good.
If you want fishy tasting vegetables, go ahead.
Now, we mentioned earlier there's cool weather. That's what we're talking about today. Cool weather is a lot different than warm weather in the sense that the plants do like to be a lot cooler. The cool plants, veggie plants, germinate better in a cool situation, and in the long run, the cold could benefit some of the cool weather, like cabbage, Brussels sprouts, kale. The cold turns the starches into sugar, so it really makes a good flavorful vegetable.
They tend to like to stay moist too, which once we get more into our rainy season here going into the fall, we're not going to have to supplement a whole lot. But if you're using these kind of materials as a mulch on top of the soil, it's going to help a lot with moisture retention, so you don't have to water nearly as often. That helps keep the soil cooler as well. So right now we are just starting September. We're not getting a lot of rain. We're getting a little sporadically here and there.
We got to add it.
So watering, of course, and unless your soil is saturated, you don't want to have soggy soil. You want evenly moist soil. But adding a mulch on top is going to help with that moisture retention as well.
Now, a lot of people prefer seed growing, or some prefer starts. I prefer starts because that gives me a head start. You like both?
I like both.
Yeah.
There are some things that maybe I don't want to grow a whole bunch of. I just want a few plants and I'll get starts, or they might be a little more difficult to start from seed. But then there are other things I like to start from seed, and we'll talk about both.
Yeah. And keep in mind with seeds, you can produce your own seeds too by planting biennials. And what you would do with a biennial, and we'll talk a little bit more about this when we start talking veggies, you'll plant some for yourself to harvest as well as some to stay over the winter. A biennial gives you fruit, food, vegetable on the first year, and flowers and gives you the seeds on the second year for the next year's crop.
We'll talk about some of those coming up.
So let's talk about plants.
Okay, so one of the growers that we get our veggie starts from has these handy tags in them. You're going to find that some plants have different varieties that will give you harvest at different times, or even potentially continuous harvest, depending on how you pick your veggies. One example is broccoli. There are broccolis that you can plant your starts now, and you're going to get a fall harvest of a nice broccoli head. There are other ones that are going to overwinter and start producing your broccoli heads and sprouts in the spring. So these are going to help give you clues to that. So some of them, an example would be a lettuce, are going to be a continuous harvest. What that means is instead of picking a whole big head like you would find in a grocery store, you're going to be taking the outer leaves off, eating those, and leaving the smaller inner leaves to continue to grow up. Here we have the fall harvest vegetable. So you know that you're going to plant this, and in a short amount of time, probably 2 to 3 months.
It depends on all the
Yeah, it depends on the vegetable. You're going to be harvesting that this year. The overwintering vegetables, this often means that you're going to get production in the spring after you've had them in the winter.
Again, depending on what it is, usually around March.
Mm-hmm. And then there are other things that are very cold hardy, some of those being continuous harvest vegetables that you can harvest on here coming up soon in the fall, your kales, your mustards, your lettuce, and you're going to be able to continue to pick off of those through the winter.
Here we have a snow crown cauliflower. This is going to be kind of one of your more typical cauliflowers that you see in the market. It is a vigorous growing one. You will have a high yield on this. Just a nice, crisp, fresh cauliflower. Here we have one called Purple of Sicily. Purple of Sicily is going to give you several heads for a long period of time. You can see this is a fall harvest one. It's a nice rich flavor. Now it's a gorgeous purple color, but keep in mind when you cook it, it's going to turn green. So don't expect it to be a purple dish on your table.
It's so fun to have something growing in your garden that is not something you can typically get in a grocery store.
Here we have a Green Magic broccoli. Green Magic is going to be a nice firm head. It will give off some, it'll be a crisp head, and then it'll give off some side shoots that will be a little more tender. Very delicious. Here we have, oh, that's what I just had. Here we have Marathon broccoli. Marathon broccoli is going to be more of the typical broccoli you see in the grocery stores. It'll be a nice firm head. You can see this one is also a fall harvest. Okay, here we have Bonarda. Bonarda, you can see, is an overwintering one. So keep in mind when you're getting your fall harvest, think ahead and do your spring harvest at the same time. Bonarda is a purple broccoli, and again, remember, purple broccoli does turn green when cooked. It's a nice, nice sweet one. Here we have a mixed tray. This one is sprouting broccoli. Sprouting broccoli is another one that's going to give off multiple heads for several months. It is a purple one. These you can, I don't know if you can see with the tag, but they're tiny little heads, kind of in a bouquet. Nice and tender. And next to it, we've got a Maribel cabbage. Maribel cabbage is a green and red cabbage that can be used in slaws, shredded and added to. It's not one that you do a sauerkraut with, but a slaw would be great with it.
It's so nice to have some of those mixed packs if you, maybe there's just one or two of you eating the produce, or you have a very small garden and you don't want 6 broccoli plants that are going to get huge and take up all of your space.
Right, right. Now this one is one of my favorites. This one's called Artwork. This is a broccoli. Again, fall harvest. Artwork is one of the long, slender broccolis. This one is a nice, sweet, tender one, and it's great for stir fries. So if you like to stir fry up some veggies, This broccoli artwork is great for that. Let's move on to cabbage. Cabbage is... We don't need to see that. This cabbage is called Superstar. And that's just what it is. It's a superstar. It's a great green cabbage. Nice firm. You'll see how it's got a lot of the outer leaves that are, you're going to have to take that away. Those are not very good to eat. Those can be bitter. Here we have Katarina. Katarina is another one of my favorites. It's going to be one of your smaller cabbages, but it's a very sweet cabbage. Great, again, great for slaws. Katarina is going to produce one of the bigger heads that the plant will have, and then it'll produce little ones up and down the stem. So that's a very nice one. Katarina, very sweet one. So this is a kohlrabi. This one is called Delicacy Purple. You can see by the picture it does have a purple bulb to it. It is a fall harvest kohlrabi. Very nice used on vegetable trays. It's pretty in slaws. You just eat it, peel it and eat it. That's a very nice one. Again, this purple won't stay purple if you're cooking it.
It's fun to watch those kohlrabi grow if you've never grown them before. It's kind of a cool one.
And there's some kohlrabis that get huge. Some can be 10 pounds. They get huge. But some stay small. These are the smaller ones. This one is Conan kohlrabi. This is going to be a white bulb one. Again, fall harvest. And you can use this on your veggie platters and in slaws. You just eat it out of the garden. Why not? Here we have, this is you can't call it a kale, and you can't call it a Brussels sprout, but it's a kaleette. A kaleette is, this particular one is Autumn Star. It is a cross between a kale and a Brussels sprout. And it's going to grow little kale, kind of little kale-like things up its stem instead of the Brussels sprout. But it'll grow like the Brussels sprout. Very yummy. You can use it in soups, stir fries. Eat it raw. What would you use it for?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
You don't cook, that's right.
Whatever someone cooks for me.
This one is kale. This is Alacianata. This is one that people call dinosaur food, it was, right?
Dinosaur kale?
Dinosaur kale, okay, yeah.
They get really kind of lumpy, bumpy leaves.
And this one is a continuous harvest. A lot of people use them in soup salads. And this one is a thick enough foliage that you could make chips out of it too. Once it's more mature. These are little guys right now.
So again, that continuous harvest is taking the big leaves and using them and letting the little ones to keep growing.
Yep, letting them mature. And it'll just keep on going. All right, this is a Lasianata rainbow kale. It's going to give you some extra color to it. A little purpley pink added to the foliage. Very colorful. Again, if you're cooking, it's just going to be green. This too is a continuous harvest one and can be used as chips and soups and salads as well.
You doubled up there.
Did I?
You really like the rainbow.
Oh, I did. Well, we don't need to talk about it twice.
No, let's
talk about this one. This one is Cosmic Kale. It's a variegated. A lot of people use it as a ornamental, but it is also edible. It is a perennial. Now this one is not going to bloom, so you're not going to get seeds from it. This needs to be propagated by cuttings.
So you're going to find that this is a little bit more expensive, but being perennial, you're going to continue to be able to grow it, harvest off of it. You can cut the plant back and have it bring out fresh side shoots. But because they have to propagate from root cuttings, it is a little bit more labor intensive.
Yep.
So that's why you get the little bit higher price tag. But much more production out of it.
Yes. And right here we have Rumex. Rumex is a raspberry flavored foliage. We go along and we graze it.
Mm-hmm. Tastes like raspberry vinaigrette.
Yep. Yep, you
A
can
nice
put this.
little zing in a salad.
Yeah, in a salad, even in a sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
Use it in a sandwich.
I think these are so pretty with their red stems and veins.
Mm-hmm.
I've used this a lot as an ornamental in the garden or in containers.
Well, and you can see with this one too. We'll talk about this later on, but see all those colors?
Yeah,
This-
the bull's blood beet, I've used that as an ornamental a lot in containers as well.
This is when we say it's okay to play with your food.
Mm-hmm. Okay, some of the lettuces we have in. Salanova has become a very popular lettuce. There are several different varieties. It's one that you can let grow to a full head if you want to harvest a full head. But you can also do the continuous harvest with these. They're a little bit more compact, so you kind of have to get your fingers in there to get the outer leaves. But I didn't find much problem doing that and using it as a continuous harvest. This one is Sweet Crisp Frisee Green Salanova lettuce. The frisee meaning it's got a lot of the cuts in there. It's a little frizzly. So this one is going to stay green.
And there are 8 different varieties of Salanova, and they are all going to be slow to bolt, and they don't get bitter.
This is another frisee, this Sweet Crisp Frisee Red. Looks green right now, but we're starting to see a little bit of the red coloring come in on the edges of the leaves. And as this matures, it gets so pretty.
And it gets very full, very full. It's not going to be floppy like this.
Yeah, these are just babies. Babies coming out of the greenhouse. So this one is the incised leaf red Salanova. It's still got nice pretty edges on it, but it's not quite as frizzy. It's more of a ruffle.
Yeah.
More of a ruffle.
Yeah. Or incised.
Or incised. This one, not a Salanova, Optima Butter Crunch lettuce. Butter Crunch is a favorite.
Yeah,
Stays
it is
nice
a very
and
favorite,
nice
yeah.
and crisp.
Yeah. Has
you
a
know,
buttery, nutty flavor.
Yeah, I don't like those floppy lettuces. I like a little bit of a crunch to them. Butter Crunch says it in the name. It's a good one. We don't have an example of a romaine lettuce out here, but we do get in quite a bit of the Paris Island romaine.
We just got some in just a few minutes ago. Yeah.
And that is another.
It's a delicious one.
You know romaine. It's a nice crispy one. You can do that as a continuous harvest. You see the whole heads in the grocery stores, but there's no reason you can't do a continuous harvest and keep taking the outer leaves off and having those nice big crispy leaves.
I guess it all depends on how big of a salad you want.
You can cut them up. we're not rabbits here. Then we've got a few of our odds and ends. Here's the bull's blood beet that Holly mentioned earlier. This is one of my favorites, partially because of that beautiful color. Along with color, you get a lot of nutrients as well. And beet greens are edible. You can take these baby leaves. They're usually the best when they're younger because they're more tender, and put them in your salad mixes and such. Same with radish greens. But then of course these will get your nice root vegetable, your beet, and beet will be ready for a fall harvest. And then we have an example of a celery here. This is peppermint stick celery, so you get nice pink streaks in the stalks. Now, Holly, is this
very colorful when it matures?
The different celeries? I think we talked about how some of them get a nice big stalk like you're used to in a grocery store,
This
and some
is
are
not
thinner.
going to. This is
going to be a thinner
yeah,
one.
Yeah, the ones like Victoria and Utah, those are the nice thicker ones. This one's going to be a lot.
What I have noticed growing some of these skinnier ones is they stay nice and tender, but they have a robust flavor.
Oh, they do. They're very bright.
Yeah,
Very
you don't
bright.
need to add nearly as much to get the flavor in your soups and stews. It's really yummy.
And I use the leaves and everything. The leaves. Oh, the leaves really brighten up a salad too.
Mm-hmm. And then we have a few spinaches here. Here's the lakeside spinach. Sometimes people come in and they can't find the spinach because they're looking for those spinach leaves that we're used to eating. these are their little first leaves that come out. Spinach is kind of funny that way. It has these long skinny leaves, but these new leaves coming out are going to be your more recognizable spinach leaves.
And these are considered an arrowhead leaf. So the leaf is actually going to be shaped similar to an arrowhead.
Here's the seaside spinach. Holly can talk about
Okay.
the spinaches.
Seaside spinach is going to be one of your largest spinaches, one of the largest leaves. Very, very robust in flavor. This is considered one of the largest of the spinaches. Great
so
for
would
any of them.
Lakeside be more of a...
It's going to be a really thick foliage, a big, thick foliage.
Mm.
Yeah.
So how does Lakeside compare?
Lakeside's going to be a thinner leaf. It'll be a smaller leaf, and it's a totally different looking leaf.
Interesting. Okay.
They're both just as equally delicious.
And flamingo spinach.
Flamingo is going to be a flat leaf spinach. So again, a different looking spinach. They're all used the same way. They're all delicious. You can use them as just steamed. I put some in salads. I just eat them as is. They're just very versatile.
Some people ask us about this. They think maybe something's wrong. This is just the seed that's hanging onto those first leaves. Just a little seed shell, I guess you might call it. So nothing to worry about. It's just gonna fall off and go away.
So we're gonna plant this 15-gallon pot up. I'm gonna put some broccoli in it. Remember, we start out with potting soil, whether it's the 420, also known as Ultimate, or the Edna's, and then you want your fertilizer in there. It's organic. I'm not one of those to fuss and muss about measuring. Organics are not gonna burn.
They do have recommendations on the packaging if you're really not sure, and partially those of us who have been gardening for a long time, we have a little bit better idea of how much fertilizer goes into these things. If you're starting out and you're unsure, read the directions. They're going to tell you a lot.
Yep. And again, remember, you don't have to be exact to the measurements because it is organic. You're not going to hurt anything. So here's the azomite. Remember, this is the trace minerals that is going to help your plants store the nutrients that are going to keep it healthy and happy, and it also will enhance the flavor of the broccoli that I'm putting in here. So sprinkle some of that in, and then because I'm in the container, I'm not going to use that dolomite lime, but I do want calcium in there to help create a good strong plant.
Get some out of the pot.
So there's my ingredients. Now I'm going to mix them in.
You don't really have to worry about mixing it all the way to the bottom. No. Your plant roots are going to start out in the surface area anyway. And then as you're watering, everything's roots and supplements are going to be working their way down through the soil.
So you just basically want to put it for now where that root is going. And the roots are, you can see there's not going to be that many roots right now. I'm just going to put 4 in this, and it's going to make a very full container. But as they grow, I'm going to thin some of their foliage out and keep them a little more open. This is broccoli artwork, one of my favorites.
If you haven't grown broccoli before, as they mature, they get real big, wide leaves. Yeah. So they do take up some space.
And again, you want to prune it a bit as it grows in a small space like this. When you're in the ground or a big raised bed, that's a whole different story.
Yeah,
you can plant them farther
apart. But these little leaves that are here providing so much nutrition to the plant right now are eventually going to be shaded out by bigger leaves, and then these ones won't so much be necessary. So it's okay to go, like, after these are shaded under big leaves, you can go and take these off, and then the plant's not supporting it anymore. You're going to get more airflow through your container and your plants.
Now I'm planting these on the very edge so that as they grow, some of the plant could be out here, not all in the container. And I'm going to squeeze one more in, and this is going to be a full pot.
But those outer ones will kind of grow out and away from that center one.
Yeah.
So they adjust when they're growing next to each other, just like you see trees in a forest.
And then every 2-3 weeks, I like to throw more fertilizer on. Again, organic, so I just throw it on. I don't worry about measuring. And once you've got the azomite and the calcium in there, you don't need to do it again this season.
Now, sometimes a nice way to fertilize after you have things planted and growing is with a liquid with a little spider on it. Really, a little spider. Our garden friends. So this is a liquid being readily available to the plant. What she put in here is going to break down slowly and continuously feed the plants. This gives a really quick boost because it's in a liquid form, easy to take up by the roots. Espoma, being an organic, it's a little smelly. You mix it up with your water in your watering can, watering in, and the plants just love it. They love that smelly stuff.
And keep in mind when you're putting the soil in, you're not going all the way to the top. You want to make sure there's a lip so that when you're watering, especially when the plants are young, that soil is going to kind of try to float and the water's going to come up and it's going to take a while for it to catch and drain. You don't want it spilling over the edge of the pot.
At least an inch, but sometimes in bigger pots where you're going to be watering quickly with your watering wands or what have you, you might leave a little bit more. Holly's probably got 3 to 4 inches here. You could do 2 inches. This is just happened to be how much her bag of potting soil filled, and it's just perfectly fine. There's a pretty good soil reservoir there.
And what I like to do is I like to put the tag in there because I like to grow different things of the same vegetable. And this just reminds me of which one's in this container.
Well, if you're trying new things, then you know, oh, I really like this one. What variety is this?
Yeah.
So I can repeat it next year.
Yep.
Talking about seed starting. This is something I've really gotten into. There are definitely different ways you can go. Some people have a greenhouse that stays a little warmer and is good for sprouting seeds. Sometimes you don't have a good outdoor space and you want to have a grow light indoors. That's a whole different topic, but if you want something inexpensive, I would suggest either a fluorescent plant grow light. The issue that I've come upon with fluorescents is they need to be about 2 to 4 inches above the plant. So if you have things growing at different rates, it's a little tricky. You can also get nice grow lights that are LED that don't put off a lot of heat, and they're getting to be pretty inexpensive too. So I think that would be my preferred route, especially if you're just starting out. An LED is going to give you a good, strong amount of light. There's our friend. And he always visits us when we're doing the videos. Yes. He's so cute.
Same tree.
Lovely voice. And then lightpost. Excuse you. So yeah, you can definitely get into more expensive, brighter lights. I've been working with a ceramic metal halide light. But if you're just starting out, I would recommend getting an inexpensive LED light. If you're wanting to start seeds indoors, or a lot of people ask about growing herbs indoors, you'd also want a good grow light, and an LED would work for that.
And I've got LEDs in my grow room that do just fine.
Yeah, they're nice, and they don't really. Do yours give off much heat that you notice?
Not that I notice. I've got 2 big ceiling ones, with 4 bulbs each.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in my ceramic metal halide, while it can cover a big area because it is just so intense, I've noticed that it does give off quite a bit of heat, which in certain situations that's good.
Yeah.
If you've got a cooler space that you're working in, but I definitely keep some fans going. Speaking of fans, that's if you're going to have seedlings indoors for any length of time,
you need to have
having a light fan blowing and circulating air in your room is really beneficial. It helps promote strong stems.
Yeah.
They can get real leggy and flimsy if you don't have any air movement.
Bend over the side of the pot or something.
Yeah. You get a much more stout, strong plant if you have some air movement. It also helps with some pest control.
And disease.
The fungal diseases. You're gonna keep some of those pest insects away. Even indoors, they're gonna find you. That helps tremendously. Then you want to know when to start your seeds. Botanical interests. That's probably the biggest group of seeds that we sell, are the botanical interests, they have this great chart on their website, botanicalinterest.com. I printed this out, so we have it here as a cheat sheet by the seeds, so you're always welcome to look at it. They have an indoor sowing guide of your vegetables and herbs, your flowers and ornamentals, as well as a second page that is your outdoor sowing guide. And they break it up into weeks before and after frost dates. So because that changes depending on where you're living, here in the Pacific Northwest, specifically Marysville, Washington, our last spring frost date averages April 6th. Our first fall frost date averages October 24th. So when it's saying, a seed packet is saying you have, say, 50 days to maturity, and maybe it's something that isn't going to deal well with the colder temperatures, with the frost, at this point, we have roughly 50 days before those frosts start. The nice thing about our cool weather crops is a lot of them can handle plenty of frost.
Yep.
But this is a good guide to help you figure out when you want to get things started. You want them to have a little bit of warmer weather growing time to get sizable before we start getting cold. So this is something that I've come up with, that I have in the store. The one I have at home, I've just gone to each one of these 10 to 12 weeks before your average last frost date, and I put in my average date so I don't have to go to my calendar and do the math every time. So handy to have those little cheat sheets, especially if you're doing a lot of different sowing at different times. Alrighty, let's look at some seed packets. We carry seeds from 3 different companies. We've talked a little bit about the botanical interests. I love their seed packets. They've got some great information. They have pretty illustrations on them. Sometimes I would prefer to have an actual photo of something so I know what the true color is. So that's maybe one little thing that is not my favorite on those. We have the Deep Harvest seed. They are out on Whidbey Island, so very local, and they have all varieties that do well for us in the Pacific Northwest. So I'd love to support them. They're local, so if you want to come support our local business and then in turn support their local business, that's a great way to go. And then we have the Ed Hume seeds. Ed Hume being another Pacific Northwest gardener, long time here in the area, has done a lot of TV and radio. I learned a lot from him when I was growing up. And his seed packets have beautiful pictures on them, so you can really know what to expect when you're growing your vegetables. Well, let's take a look we'll go for the Touchstone Gold Beet in the botanical interests. They do have some that are USDA organic seed. They have this green top to their seeds. There are other ones that are not grown organically. So it depends on what you're looking for. If you want your produce to be grown organic, use organic products and fertilizers, and you will have an organic product. If your concern is also that the seed was produced organically, we do have that available. The front of this packet has a lot of information. This says it's frost tolerant. So going past that October 24th frost date, this is still going to be in your garden and growing and available for harvest. It's not going to be taken out by a frost. 85 to 90 days to harvest. That's going to be to get a nice size beet. Now, if you're wanting it for greens, you can harvest earlier than that. If you're still wanting to grow that root vegetable, you want to make sure you're just harvesting some leaves and leaving plenty others to provide food for that root. So in early spring or late summer, that's telling you that you can grow these as a spring crop or sowing in late summer for a fall crop. And then a little description of the actual produce. Flipping over, this is something I really appreciate about their seed packets. They have this side strip on here that has just the very easy to reference days to emerge. That's how long it's going to take your seed to germinate and your seedling to come up out of the ground. So keep in mind, your days to harvest is after the seed has germinated. So this says days to emerge, 5 to 21 days. 21 days, that's 3 weeks. So make sure you're thinking, I might have 3 weeks before I get to that 58 to 90 days until germination, or until harvest, sorry. Some of them will say days to maturity. It has good information on spacing. I would also say for some crops that you're doing continuous harvest on, lettuces and stuff, they're not going to grow up to need quite as much space, so you can get away with putting them a little closer together. I also, when I'm looking at these, I'll look for the spacing in a row and consider that the spacing for my whole bed, because I can, from the two sides of my raised bed, I can reach the whole thing, and I don't feel like I need rows to be able to go down to harvest. So you'll have to decide how you're going to grow and how you're going to harvest. A lot of recommendations are made for people harvesting with machinery, maybe more of a farm style. So you may not need to space your rows far apart. You may not even need to plant in rows. Maybe even just groupings or sections of your bed or in a container.
Just depends on your situation.
Yeah. So these are basic guidelines. These are not hard and fast rules. But looking at the spacing is going to tell you a little bit about how big that plant is going to grow. They also have some information about how much area the seeds in this packet is going to cover. They'll talk about planting outside and planting inside. Sometimes they don't recommend one or the other. Sometimes both work, but you want to do it at different times. And then many of them have special instructions. This one says special germination instructions. To hasten and improve germination, soak seed for 2 to 24 hours before sowing. That gets a little moisture going into that seed shell, so it's ready to open up and release the sprout faster. Along that line, I do want to mention that once you sow your seeds, you want to keep them moist. Think of it as this shell, maybe a little Pac-Man shell, that when it's moist and it's in the proper conditions, it's going to open up and let your sprout come out. If that dries up, that's going to close off and pinch off your seedling. It's done. It's not coming back from that. So it's extremely important to keep them moist until those seedlings have come up.
But not dripping, sopping
Not
wet.
dripping, sopping wet. We're not drowning them, but they do need to have moisture to germinate. Okay, so let's start seeding some stuff. I've got a few different things to seed in here. We'll talk about some different ways you can use them, and some different things we're going to plant in them and how. So first of all, I've got some trays. We have our big tray. This does not have any drainage holes in it, so you can plant directly in these, but I would recommend using a drill or maybe an older soldering iron and putting some holes in this plastic. If you're melting your plastic, make sure you do it outside where it's well ventilated. So then you could have something else underneath this, potentially another tray to catch water when you need to. But you want to make sure you're not having your seedlings sitting in excess water, so you want a way for that water to escape. Part of why I like to use these is I like to use cell packs or other containers that I put inside these. So this can be my catch for water, as well as having the humidity dome to put over the top for while my seeds are germinating. This is going to keep a lot of humidity and moisture in, so keeping a little humid microclimate while my seeds are opening up and my sprouts are coming out. A general rule of thumb is once you have about 50% of your seeds germinated, you can take this humidity dome off. Most of the other ones have started, even if you haven't seen them come up out of the soil yet. But you don't want to keep it too humid while you have little seedlings in there. If you're planting in separate little containers in here, you can take them out and move them out to an open tray and keep your others that haven't germinated inside here. That's what I do. I kind of have a rotation going when I have a lot of different seeds starting. Now, of course, you can get a lot of different products for your seeds. This is what I'm going to plant in a little bit later. This is the Cocoa Core cell packs. You can also use plastic. These ones, they say that you can plant this whole thing right in the ground. That can be great for some of those plants that don't like their roots disturbed. I tend to like to give them a little head start and maybe take a little bit of the bottom off when I'm planting.
Yep.
Just so they don't have to struggle to get through. I don't.
Because that's a lot to push through.
Yeah, I don't want to make it hard on them. But by the time you're planting them out, this has been moist for a while, and so it's getting a lot softer on the bottom, and it's pretty easy to do that. So I'm going to plant in that a little bit later. And that comes with its own tray and humidity dome. Here are some unwashed. Sorry, I'm not going to be using these today. Some of the jumbo cell packs. A lot of our veggies come in these. I like to save them because this is just a really nice size to plant in, especially if you're not going to be planting them out really quickly. If you might need to have them growing in this for a couple weeks, you can do that. Holds a decent amount of soil and to hold moisture. We also get these little open guys, and a lot of times we'll get veggies. There'll be like 4 in here where you can just easily kind of take the whole thing out, break it into little cubes and plant that way. Just kind of gently teasing those roots apart. I find those really handy to seed in as well. So I tend to save those. I washed those ones up. I used some dish soap and then just rinsed them really well. Some people like to use a diluted bleach solution. When I do that, I like to let them sit out for a day so any residue dissipates. But if you potentially had anything in here that had any disease issues or pest issues, you want to make sure you get them cleaned out, so you're not going to be giving that to your new babies. My fiance loves to have these things for food storage, for putting leftovers in, for food prep. So I stole some out of the kitchen, but a lot of people have these things kicking around from takeout food. You can plant right in here if you're doing something shallow, maybe filling this up halfway so there's a little room for sprouts. You can use the cover that comes with it as a humidity dome, and then as soon as you see those guys coming up, you say, oh, it looks like probably half of those have germinated. You take that guy off, and then they've got plenty of headroom to grow. I like to use them right in my big humidity tray. I have them all contained in one spot. Now, I forgot to do this earlier. I'll do it later after the fact, but I am going to drill some holes in here because I don't want this to be soggy. I want to be able to put it in here, let it drain out into this bigger tray, so I have moist but not soggy soil. All right, so I think I'll go ahead and plant one of these guys. I'm going to start with some microgreens.
Yum.
Mm-hmm. Now, the great thing about microgreens and seedlings, there's a ton of nutrition packed in there. When you're growing new little baby sprouts of plants, you don't fertilize them right away. That seed contains everything that plant needs to get going. So that means there's a lot of beneficial food for us.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So when you're doing microgreens, you don't have to worry about the spacing that they talk about on the seed packet. We want to pack them real densely because we're just going to get them to sprout stage and then we're going to harvest and eat them. So I'm going to use my EB Stone seed starting mix. I have it pre-moistened. I recommend always pre-moistening your seed starting mix. The seed starting mixes are generally sterile. They don't have a bunch of food in it because that's not necessarily for a new little baby sprout. But they also tend to be very dry, and in that case sometimes hydrophobic, so it doesn't want to soak up the water, it wants to slough it all off. So I use a container that does not have drainage. That can be a big pot like I'm using today. I also at home love using the little plastic tubs that are meant for mixing small amounts of cement. For me, it's a good size for, putting something like this in there, piling my soil, doing my seeds, going on to the next one, putting it in, and I get a decent reservoir to have my soil mixed up in. I usually like to use warm water. It seems like it absorbs into the substrate a little faster and better. My seed starting mix I'm using today, I put the water in it yesterday just to make sure that it had plenty of time to absorb. We had some old stuff kicking around that was real dry, so we wanted to make sure that it absorbed plenty of water. But generally, an hour or two before it's gonna be plenty moist by the time you're using it.
Now, micro sprouts can be used in salads, in sandwiches. I like to nibble on them as themselves out of the container, and I've also had them in a little tufted pile on top of maybe a herbed piece of chicken breast, and
beautiful garnish.
Maybe a little raspberry sauce with it is delicious to go with the chicken.
My fiance is a chef at Microsoft. He loves to have some pretty garnish on his food, so that the microgreens are right up his alley. That's something that they tend to have at Microsoft, and they're in the works of building an underground grow facility to always produce those things for themselves. So that's pretty exciting. Little side shoot there, but Microsoft is working on growing their own produce, and that's pretty cool. So you can see I'm leaving a little headroom, both for water and for the sprouts as they grow. Especially if I want to use my lid here, you might not even want to put this much soil in. And you see me patting it and firming it. I am not compacting it. I just want to make sure that I don't have air pockets in here. I don't want their roots to have to go into an air pocket. I want them to have nice moist soil to grow through. But if you pack it down, those little baby roots are going to have a harder time going in. And especially for growing microgreens, we're putting them just on the surface. So we want to make this easy for those roots to grow into. Otherwise, they're just going to kind of get squirrely on the top, and then they're not going to know which way to go. Of course, I didn't put on my gloves for this.
I gave
them
to you.
I brought them. Okay, so we've got an Ed Hume packet of microgreens. They're just calling this the flavorful mix. If we look on the back, it says it includes lettuce, brassicas being your cabbage, kale, broccoli, those kind of guys, spinach, beet greens, mustard, radish, and various herbs. So there's going to be a lot of flavors packed into this. For ease, I decided to bring scissors and not try to peel this
cut
thing.
Your finger.
And again, we're doing microgreens. We're going to harvest these as sprouts, so we can pack these pretty densely. Look at that fun mix. There's all sorts of stuff in there. Alrighty, so I'm just going to kind of sprinkle these evenly. I'm putting this whole packet in this one little food tray. I could potentially even put more. I mean, you want a single layer.
Yeah, you want it nice and solid.
If you're doing something like pea shoots that you're gonna grow, you're gonna cover this whole thing like in a single layer of peas. Peas, it's the size of a pea, dehydrated pea. So each one of those seeds is gonna take up a lot of space. So you're gonna cover this whole thing. And
you want to make sure it's the kind with tendrils.
Oh yes, we'll talk the peas in a moment. Yeah. Holly's excited about the pea
excited
tendrils.
about the peas.
So I am firming these a little bit to make sure they are in nice contact with the soil. I've got nice moist soil. I don't have a little mist bottle, but you could also go along and mist that just to make sure it's nice and moist along the surface. And then I'm going to take a second container in this case because I'm surface sowing and I want them to keep contact with the nice moist soil. Instead of using my cover, I'm going to use this to put on top. Give them some darkness and put a rock. It can be bigger than this. This is going to give it some weight to push this down, so it's keeping those seeds in contact with the soil, keeping that in turn keeps them moist and keeps them so the roots know where to go when they sprout. So you'll want to keep checking this. I tend to check mine at least twice a day.
Well, you don't need to in the very beginning.
But I'm excited. And I have all sorts of things going at one time because it's just so fun to start all these little seed babies. So, you know, just lifting up and checking, seeing if you have sprouts going. Once you have a good amount of sprouts going, you're going to want to take this off so they have light to grow. That's when you need them to be under your light or out in a greenhouse. Or, I mean, really you could probably do, you know, even say on your deck. Maybe you're getting some morning sun, but you're not getting the really drying afternoon sun. That might be a good location to grow these on.
Different situations, yeah.
And of course, when you've got something that's this mobile, if you're finding that it's drying out too fast in one location, put it in someplace shadier.
Yep.
But if you have your nice controlled area in your house with your grow light, that works great. Then generally, when these get to be about, well, it's going to be different heights for different kinds of sprouts. But once they get their first baby true leaves, then you can go through with your scissors. You can harvest this whole thing at one time,
or just a section.
Just a section. This way, these might be kind of when you got like single serving little trays, so you can harvest the whole one and have other ones coming on. Or maybe you've got a large family, or you have a get together going on, and you want to do this whole tray full of the same microgreens. You can do that, customized to your situation.
Yeah, and if it's something that you're going to eat daily, I'd do the big tray.
Yeah. Yeah. Do people juice microgreens?
It depends on what it is. Because when you juice, you primarily are juicing for what vitamins you're trying to get. You know, like for my juice, I have veggies, the parsley and the cucumber. That's to help with the organs.
Yeah, a lot of people juice kale, but I would think maybe in that situation it might be more beneficial to grow just the full plant, so you're juicing whole leaves.
Yeah.
This would be probably better.
Keep
just to
in
eat
mind
the
with
greens.
kale, you need to have a good quality juicer because it will work on the motor.
Taking out the stems and that
Yeah.
rib in the center helps too.
Yeah, we don't do that. We just throw it in and listen to the motor go.
Alrighty, well there's our microgreens. I'm gonna put that in its nice spot. Now, one of the things that seed packets will often tell you, as well as what temperature they germinate the best at. That's good to know. And a lot of time, it's your average house temperature. A lot of time, it's 65 to 70 is their perfect germination temperature. So
they'll let you know. They'll let you know if they're happy or not.
Next, we're going to plant some peas. Now, partially, we decided to do this because a lot of the wholesale growers aren't growing fall veggies this year, and so everybody's trying to get their fall veggies from one or two wholesalers. So we're having a trouble getting our hands on some things, like these peas. This is the last pack we have of peas, and we haven't been able to get any more. We might be able to at some point. We don't know what people have coming on, but right now we don't have them. However, you can plant your own from seed, and while you may or may not get pea production, it depends on kind of how the conditions are when we get to late October, November. But you can eat this whole plant. The whole plant is edible and delicious. I didn't even know this until I started working with Holly, and she's snacking on our plants. She likes to eat these little tendrils. So if you come in and you see that none of our plants have tendrils, that's why.
They're yummy.
They taste like fresh peas.
Yeah, they're delicious.
I know that at the Microsoft cafes, they have pea shoots that they can use. Now the most tender part for fresh eating is going to be this very new growth. So you can take this whole thing,
just like
toss
you did.
it in a salad. You can stir fry these. Whenever this tastes like fresh peas, you can even eat the flowers. So they make a beautiful garnish. So you put your pea shoots and flowers on the top of your salad you're serving, and it's just gorgeous. It's something a little different that people don't expect. But this whole thing is very tender and so good.
My peas, they didn't get very big this year because I, snacked on them.
Oh my goodness. One thing to keep in mind, if you're wanting to plant seeds, giggle fuss, if you're wanting to plant seeds, and you want the tendrils, you're going to want the pole varieties. The bush peas aren't trying to climb up on anything. So you will get the nice tender shoots, but you won't have the tendrils. So it just depends on what you're going for.
Go for it all.
So this one happens to be a sugar snap. This guy will have time to get peas, but we're growing for the whole plant. So I have my little cell tray here with the cocoa coir. I filled up 6 of them. And what Holly did in the meantime was she took the scissors and she cut little X's in the bottom because we wanted to make it easy for the roots to grow through. So once again, I'm putting my moistened seed starting mix in here. I am gently patting it down to make sure that I don't have air pockets. Not compressing it too much though, because we want those roots to be able to get through easily. Now this is a much smaller reservoir, so I am leaving a bit of a lip, but a lot of the time, especially right at first, you're going to be watering with a mist bottle, so you're not likely to be dispersing too much soil. And then it's also a good idea to water from the bottom, from down in the tray if you can, so it can soak up water rather than splashing water all over the top. I admit sometimes I'm lazy, especially as things grow up. I'll go through with my watering can and just slosh on there.
You just want to be careful with the watering can in the beginning. It's gonna pour a hole in there, and it's gonna bring your seed up.
Yeah, when you've got seeds that want to be covered for germination, you don't want to disperse your soil and disrupt that. Now peas, I did not soak these guys. You certainly can. I usually at home soak them overnight and plant them the next day. That just helps them absorb some water, and so they germinate quicker. But if you're going to keep your medium nice and moist, you don't necessarily need to. It might just take a couple days longer. And you can see these guys, they're shriveled up, they're dehydrated. When you soak them, they're going to plump up. But this is nice and moist, so they're going to plump up in here. With peas, you can plant 2 or 3 in a cell. They're gonna vine and grow with each other, and as long as you're planting them out into more soil, they're gonna have plenty of room for their roots to go in. Plus, the other benefit with this is if they don't all germinate, you're not gonna end up with empty cells. So peas, I was right. Okay, 1 inch of soil. So general rule. Bigger seeds like to be further down in the soil, and the smaller ones like to be a little closer to the top, maybe with a fine sprinkling of soil and some on the surface. Your seed packets, of course, are going to give you information on that. These being pretty big seeds, they like to be about 1 inch down. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to place my peas first, so I know I've covered all the spots. Oh my gosh, she just wants to poke them in there. Holly fingers.
Am I just being a little impatient?
A little bit. You're not known for being impatient. What? Okay, so I've got my 2 in each spot. Then we're going to push them 1 inch down like Holly already demonstrated. Cover them over.
These are going the wrong direction.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That was bothering me too. Alrighty, and then once you've done that, you can add soil if you need to. Again, it's okay to leave a little bit of a well so you're not dispersing soil. My growing medium here is pretty moist, so I'm not going to worry about watering these in today.
Check them tomorrow.
But yeah, check them tomorrow. Check them daily. This particular tray, I left it on the bottom, did come with its own humidity dome. That is going to have a glare. Bear with us. You can put your humidity dome on until you see those sprouts coming up, and then take it off. And that's when those sprouts come up, that's when you want to make sure that you have them with some good light, whether that is an indoor grow light or out getting some sun.
So we're going to talk about pests and disease in a little bit, but Sarah's going to talk about one of our new favorites.
We just got this one in. It's Mertensia, or oyster leaf. This one being Mertensia maritima, meaning grows by the water.
It's also known as a shore plant.
Yeah, so these guys are native to Britain and Northern Europe. Has these adorable little blue flowers on it, nice blue-green foliage. It is described as having a flavor like oysters, anchovies, mushrooms. I tried a leaf. It's mild, it's delicious, it's tender. I really liked it.
And it's a really cool looking plant too.
It's really pretty, yeah. So this is the first time in the time that we've been working here, have gotten this one in, and we're really excited about it.
Which in the past I've been able to get it, but I'm talking a long time ago. This is a very hard to come by plant. Very hardy, it's zone 3.
But I do want to say, like, everybody keeps going, ew, I don't want something that tastes like oysters. It's not like you're eating an oyster. It's very mild, but it's got a good flavor, and like I said, very tender. I need one of these. I think it's adorable. Moving on from our adorable plants.
Okay, so everybody has to deal with pests and disease. I always like to keep BT. This is Bacillus thuringiensis. It's formulated specifically for caterpillars, worms, anything like that. To me, this is a must-have always in your gardening supplies.
When you're dealing with your cool veggies, a lot of them are going to be brassicas. That's your cabbage, your kale, your Brussels sprouts, broccoli, like all those things. Those pretty little white moths that flit around our gardens. I love to see them,
but
for the most part.
But they're not good.
But they are so quick and sneaky about laying their eggs on the underneath of the leaves of those brassicas. And those hatch into very hungry caterpillars. And they're green, and they blend in with the leaves, and they'll hang out stretched along a vein, so it's really easy to miss them. But you'll see big chunks eaten out of your leaves, generally from an edge. That's a good way to know that you have a caterpillar damage as opposed to a slugger snail who will eat holes right in the center often. But if you're losing big chunks of your leaves from an edge, start looking for those caterpillars.
Yep. And they'll eat fast, so you don't want to just put it off. This is formulated for organic gardening, as well as this one. This is Rose RX 3-in-1. I use this a lot for mildew and pests, such as aphids, spider mites. You can also do a pre-spray on your roses to help prevent black spot and powdery mildew, which is very common for roses in the Northwest.
Great one to have in your arsenal.
I use it on houseplants even, so this is a great one. Neem is another one that I insist on always having in my gardening supplies. This also is for organic gardening. I use this one mostly for my mildew, my spider mites. It is also helps prevent rust. Anything that is susceptible to rust or mildew, before it gets anything, I try to give it a pre-spray.
It's a little stinky. It's natural. A lot of the natural things are.
From the neem tree.
Very, very safe to use, like, on your edibles.
You want to grab those 3?
Sure. We have Captain Jack's dead bug. This is spinosad. This will also work for your caterpillars. So this is another one that you could use if you don't have BT. But it also works on some of those sucking guys like spider mites. It is am I right in saying it's a bacteria?
The spinosad?
Yeah.
The spinosad is from an old rum factory. From the old kegs from a rum factory.
It basically infects these critters and hurts them, but it doesn't hurt the rest of us.
Right.
Fungal issues. That's something we deal with in the Pacific Northwest with our humidity.
That's exactly with just about everything.
With our excess water. So powdery mildew comes about looking like powder on your leaves. We also sometimes have some overwater issues, whether that's with us adding too much water to already saturated soil or from getting a lot of rain. You'll see yellowing leaves starting from the bottom of your plant, getting brown or black spots coming on them, removing the worst of those leaves, and then spraying weekly with a product like Fungadil is going to help keep that at bay.
You can say it.
Spit it out. And then Sluggo, because we're wet and humid, we have lots of slugs and snails. Sluggo, again, it's natural. They love it. They eat it.
It's safe to be around kids and animals.
Yeah, we can eat this. It's not going to hurt us. I don't recommend it.
No, I don't either.
But if you have dogs in your yard, or like I have chickens that when in the evenings they're free roaming in my yard, I don't worry about them with Sluggo around because it's just the slugs and snails that are going to be affected by this. Also keeping in mind that they like nice moist places to hide. So when I have stacked pots sitting in my yard, I'll pick them up and find those slugs. Or if I let things get a little too weedy, they have a lot of habitat to live in. So cleaning up that kind of stuff is also going to help.
And Sluggo is a product that will work when wet. So unlike a lot of the liquids, if they get wet, then you've got to reapply them, and those are usually chemicals anyway. I'm an organic gardener. The only time you have to reapply is when you find areas that you no longer see it. If you see it wet, that's fine, it'll still work. But if you no longer see it, then that means slugs have taken it and crawled away to die. So they don't leave their bodies laying around.
Give some fresh stuff for the next ones.
And we want to thank you for spending some time with us today. I hope we weren't a little too wordy.
We get a little chatty. We just get so excited.
Thank you and have a good day.